Instacart is on a mission to have you not leave the couch this basketball season, because between the pregame rituals and the postgame interviews, it can be difficult to find time for everything else. So let Instacart take care of your game day snacks or weekly restocks and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Because we hear it's bad luck to be hungry on game day. So download the Instacart app today and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days. Excludes restaurants.
Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. Fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Lowe's, Levi's, and Nike pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cash back. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It's a no-brainer. Membership is free and easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cash back really adds up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 97 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
How you doing? I'm good.
I am doing fantastically.
Me too, man. Happy as a lark.
Happy as a lark. You don't hear that much.
Happy as a lark.
Get in my time machine and go back to the 1960s.
Yeah.
50s. That might even be 50s.
I don't even know what a lark is. Do you?
It's a bird.
Oh, it's happy as a lark. Oh, like a bird.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that bird's happy. It's always chirping.
I guess.
All right. Well, I guess it's better than I'm happy than a crow, or I'm happier than trying to think of
a murder of crows.
A murder of crows.
Did you know that's what the plural of, or like a flock of crows is called?
I don't like that.
It's called a murder.
It's appropriate for the podcast.
It is.
But I'm just
appropriate
saying.
for true crime.
Yeah.
All right, Gibbs, let's do Patreon shout outs because we have a lot to squeeze in. We had Karen Stavala, Brandon Logue.
Thank you.
Kayla Nelson Hendricks jumped out at our highest level.
Awesome.
Melinda Mantilla.
Oh, Matilda.
Kiara Bird.
Thank you.
Katie O'Connor.
Thank you, O'Connor.
Connie Clark.
Connie.
Are you doing an Arnold Schwarzenegger there?
Maybe.
A little Terminator action. Yeah. Amanda Campbell.
Hey, Amanda.
Maggie Walker.
Maggie.
Brittany LaBelle.
Hey, LaBelle.
Ansley Papazon.
Ooh, I like that. The Papazon.
Eleanor.
Hey, Eleanor.
Kayla Bailey.
Hey, she's a good friend on social media. Thank you.
Lauren Verholst.
Ooh, the Verholst.
Desi White.
I like Desi.
Jocelyn Hennenkamp.
The old Hennenkamp came through, huh?
Yeah, she actually came out higher than our highest level. She just said, you know what?
She rocks it.
I'm going to blow right past that.
She always rocks it.
Amy Breeden.
Thank you, Amy.
Stephanie Golden. Emily Kate.
Wow, thank you both.
Pauline Cursis.
Quit cursing.
Bianca Russell.
Hey, Bianca.
Dana Adams.
Hey, Dana.
Jennifer Mosier.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Karazina Hart.
Karazina, thank you so much.
And then Brian Shrum.
Hey, Trump?
Shrum.
Oh, Shrum. Like shroom, but shrum?
Yeah, just like shroom.
But you say shrum.
Shrum. Then we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Let's go back.
This week we selected Fawn Olson, longtime supporter.
Thank you, Fawn.
So we appreciate that. We appreciate the new support, the continued support. We had a lot of amazing PayPal support as well. Yvonne in the UK, Adam and Lindsay Newman.
Wow, thank you all.
Melissa Buell, Joseph Walton.
Thank you.
Candace Zugic. I'm going with Zugic.
Just go with Zulic.
Or you can put an L in there if
Yeah,
you want.
just make stuff up.
Dog Tag Furniture.
Hey, Dog Tag.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds interesting. Luina Llewellyn.
Llewellyn.
Yeah. I had to, that one's hard to say.
Yeah.
I had to slow down a little bit for it. So amazing support. And we appreciate everyone so much. We couldn't keep putting out all these podcasts without you. It goes a long way.
We appreciate it.
Right now on True Crime All the Time, there is an episode out on the murder of Skylar Neese. And this is one, Gibbs, we've had a lot of requests for.
So it was a really good podcast.
No, and again, a lot of ties to the Shonda Scherer. This is a 16-year-old girl who was betrayed by the people that she considered her closest friends in the world. And what they did to her was horrific.
It was terrible.
And on top of that, the fact that it kind of unfolded through the lens of social media. I think that adds a very interesting aspect to the case. But check that out. If you're going to CrimeCon's in June, it's in New Orleans, it's going to be a lot of fun. But if you're going and you haven't signed up yet and you're going to, make sure you use our code CrimeAllTheTime19.
Yes.
That helps us out. We would appreciate it if you would do that. All right, Gibbs, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Let's do it. On this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved, we're talking about Julie Ray Harper and more specifically, the unsolved murder of her son, Joel Kirkpatrick. So we'll start off talking about Joel, right? That's what we like to do.
Sure.
He was born in 1987 in Westport, Illinois. Notice how I stress that, Illinois.
Illinois, as I would say.
As you would say. Joel was a sensitive, smart, extremely creative boy. It was said that he possessed a very strong moral compass. He knew right from wrong, and his actions were dictated by this moral compass that he had. It's kind of what you hope all young kids will do, right? As a parent, you're teaching your kids the right way to do things. You're helping guide them in making the right decisions, and you hope they use that later on. We talked a lot about that on the TCAT episode, right? Obviously, the girls that committed the crime in that story, they either didn't have a strong moral compass or they threw it out the window. Either one. They had one and they let it go completely.
They might have had it early, but they eventually lost it early. I don't think they threw it. I think they just lost it.
Joel Kirkpatrick wanted to be a professional game tester. So I'm thinking PC games, console games, Xbox, PS4, things like that. That would be a pretty cool job, at least for me. You know, Gibbs, I'm into games. I have a PS4. I love to play games. Have since I was a little kid. Started with Atari, made my way up to, I think I had ColecoVision too. Made my way up to the first Nintendo, and
now you play whatever upstairs all the time.
All the time.
You could be a professional game tester outer.
I could be.
Yeah.
I couldn't be a professional gamer. I've learned that because I routinely get my ass kicked.
Well, maybe if you got paid for it, you'd be better.
10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. They just dominate me. I think my hand-eye coordination has severely diminished. But back to Joel. This is what he wanted to be when he grew up. Teachers have talked about him and they were kind of in awe of not only his intelligence, because he was a very intelligent kid, but his kindness. And I think you put those two things together, you have a very intelligent, kind, empathetic kid. You're doing something right. Joel was loved by family, friends, almost everyone that encountered him couldn't help but kind of be taken by him, thinking, this is a great kid. I think it's safe to say he had limitless potential. He could have gone on to do some amazing things, right, later in life. But unfortunately, he's never going to get that chance. On October 13th, 1997, we're in the small town of Lawrenceville, Illinois. Joel's mother, Julie Ray, was asleep in her bed. Julie at this time was a PhD student at the University of Indiana. So I'm thinking she was pretty intelligent herself.
Had to be.
And it's probably where Joel got it from. And she taught him right from wrong and how to be a good kid and all that stuff. So she's asleep. She is woken up suddenly at about 4 a.m. by a loud scream. And it's just her and Joel in the house. So she immediately heads to Joel's room. She's yelling his name as she's running towards his room. When she got there, his bed was empty. So Gibbs, she doesn't know, number one, right now where he's at. She doesn't know what to do. I would say she's somewhat in a state of shock. She began to scream for help. I think she was in shock. I think she was panic-stricken because she laid on the ground sobbing.
Yeah.
She didn't know what to do. And I think it's easy to say, well, I would just do this or I would do that in a certain situation, like the situations that we talk about in our cases. But until you're put in that situation with the adrenaline, terror, whatever comes along with that specific situation, unless you've been in it before, you really don't know how you'll react.
It's true.
And everybody reacts a little differently. I know, like with my wife and I, for example, when the kids get hurt,
yes,
my wife completely shuts down. Like she is so overwhelmed. I shouldn't say shuts down, but she gets almost hysterical. She's so worried for them that she can't move forward with the next thing to do. So I almost always have to step in. Now, this is if they get hurt, bad, which they have a couple times.
Right.
She just kind of freezes because she's so stricken with terror that she can't make that next decision. It's happened about 2 or 3 times. I don't want to make it sound like this is a weekly thing, but
no. But I understand what you're saying.
And I'm not saying this makes me better than her by any means, but I don't have that. I can just assess the situation and say, okay, this is not good, but here's what we need to do. This is the next step. And it's either, call the ambulance or do this or that. So that was a long way of saying my point is you just,
what is your point?
Yeah, I've almost lost my point, but
yeah,
you just don't know how you're going to react to a given situation until you're actually in it. So she's lying there on the ground. She's crying. And then all of a sudden she felt an intruder grab her head. And this person started hitting her in the head, hitting her in the face, bouncing her face off the ground. This was violent.
It was very violent.
She struggled with this person for a while. And then the intruder stops his attack. And he's going to try to get away to exit the house. Julie jumped up, chased him through the house. And this guy ends up jumping through the glass back door, shattering the door, vaulting onto the other side, and then runs off through the backyard. So he's going to get away. She's not going to be able to catch up to him. But what she does see is this person walking under a streetlight, take off the mask that he was wearing, and she gets somewhat of a look at the man. So he ran for a little bit out of the backyard, eventually made it to the sidewalk or street, and then he slowed down. He started walking, took off his mask. She saw him. Julie went to her neighbor, a woman named Lisa Bridget, and she's pounding on Lisa's door. This is around 4:30 in the morning. And you have to set this scene, right? Julie's standing outside of her door. She's barefoot because she just got out of bed. She's wearing just a t-shirt and underwear, what she wore to bed.
Right.
And she was frantic. And she looked that way. She was a mess. She had been beaten. And she was speaking so fast that her neighbor, Lisa, couldn't understand what she was saying. 28-year-old Lisa is trying to calm her down. And what she decides to do is just to put her in a bear hug, trying to calm her nerves enough that she can understand what's going on. And it's at that point that Julie screamed out, "Joel's gone." The police were called, and it only took them a few minutes to arrive at the scene.
The dispatch time was fast, and they would get there and they would find Julie with a bruise over her eye and a gash on her arm. So then the police went over to the home and they would find Joel, who, by the way, was a 5th grader, but they found him lying on the ground between his empty bed and one of the bedroom walls. His pajamas were drenched in blood. He had been stabbed 12 times, twice through the aorta. I mean, that's brutal. This is a 10-year-old kid, a 5th grader. Somebody does this? That's just pure rage.
Rage and evil. That's evil.
It is evil.
It's evil to do it to anybody. We say it all the time, but when you're talking about a child that young, 10 years old, knowing what we know about him, he's a great kid. Not that it would be good for anybody, but it's an amazing 10-year-old. You just can't imagine how somebody in their head, in their heart, can think, you know what? I'm going to stab a 10-year-old 12 times, twice directly through the heart.
Sickening.
They found the murder weapon in the room, and it was a steak knife. And they determined that it was a steak knife pulled from Julie's kitchen, from the butcher block. Unfortunately, it's not going to yield any fingerprints.
And the problem is, that's the only thing that they test for, fingerprints. Yeah, they don't even dust fingerprints on the butcher block. They don't dust for anything. They don't even dust for prints in his room.
Aside from the knife, right?
Aside from the knife, that's it. I think that's a problem.
I think it's a big problem. It's a problem for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's not the way you do things, right? That's not the way a crime scene investigation is supposed to go. But number two, it leaves them with nothing to go on, nothing to give you the slightest next step in finding who committed this heinous murder. And you mentioned, Gibbs, that they didn't dust for fingerprints. They also did not preserve some trace evidence that was on Joel's bedspread. But it wasn't like they just left the house. They did do some investigative work. They dug up the septic tank. They inspected sinks, shower drains.
Yeah, they would even look in the washer and dryer and look at did she wash anything? Did anything happen in there? And they would test that too.
They didn't find anything. But I go back, Gibbs. Why do all of the things that they did? I mean, digging up the septic tank, that's no small feat. But yet you're not going to do what I consider to be basic criminal investigative work, right? Dusting for fingerprints, doorknobs, the butcher block that you know the knife came out of, collecting trace evidence. That just seems very strange to me. Julie's ex-husband and Joel's father was a man by the name of Len Kirkpatrick. He was a police officer. So Julie and Len were both questioned about the murder. Police quickly ruled Len out as a suspect because they knew he wasn't anywhere near the scene that night. There's no way it could have been him. And when you talk about Julie, she didn't have a criminal record. But surprisingly, Len, her ex-husband, thought she possibly could have had something to do with this. And he voiced that to the authorities. And Len goes on to tell police why he believes this may have happened. So they divorced, right? We know this is her ex-husband. Len had recently been fighting for more custody time. And I don't think Julie was happy about giving up some of her time with Joel. Len thought that Julie may have killed Joel in an attempt to get back at him. But we talked about physical evidence. There was none. And there sure wasn't any physical evidence linking Julie to the murder of her son.
No, right? They had the knife, but no fingerprints. And besides that, they had blood spatter. But again, it's nothing that's linking her.
Julie had no history of mental illness. And there was nothing in her behavior, that day or in the days leading up to Joel's murder to suggest that she would have had anything to do with it. She wasn't acting erratic or irrational or anything like that, right, Gibbs?
Exactly.
But I think the police have it in their heads that they need to look at her. Now, there was no other witness, right? Julie is basically the only witness to what she said was a man coming into her house, There's nobody to corroborate that story. Like we said, Gibbs, the police didn't have anything to go on. Their investigation dragged on for a few years, and I think they just kept coming back to Julie. And they pushed on Julie over the years. They had her retell her story a number of times. And then at a certain point, I just think they came to the conclusion that they didn't believe her. But it wasn't just the police that didn't believe her. The prosecutor didn't believe her story either and felt like there was a case to be made against Julie Harper for the murder of her son. And they moved forward with that. And the prosecutor came out to the media and said, to believe her, meaning Julie, you would have to believe that this assailant came into her home in the middle of the night wearing dark clothes, hiding his identity by the use of a mask for the sole purpose of killing a 10-year-old boy. And then after he murdered Joel, he left the house, pulled off the mask to reveal his identity to her. Nonsense. That's what the prosecutor says.
Try to have you believe.
So let's dissect that a little bit. Number one, I don't think it's nonsense to say that an intruder could break into your house and murder a family member. You and I do a lot of research. We talk about a lot of different cases. It happens more than any of us would like for it to happen. Now, the second part, why would the intruder leave and at some point take off his mask? I can't answer that question. But to say that the whole premise is nonsense, I don't agree with that. I get it. They don't believe her. But it's, what I take issue with is the word nonsense, that her story is so far outside the realm of
but they
possibility.
Can't consider it.
Yeah.
They can't even consider it. So BS.
I don't think that part is true, but it doesn't matter because in October of 2000, it's about 3 years after the murder, Julie Ray Harper was indicted for the murder of her son, Joel Kirkpatrick. But let's not forget, she had been hounded by the police for about 3 years and had to retain private counsel during that time. She had essentially spent all the money she had.
It probably doesn't take much to run through that.
Oh, it doesn't at all.
Really,
I mean,
go through it fast.
You know how much a private attorney costs. That the dollars rack up very quickly. And again, we don't know how much money she had. She's divorced. She's raising her son as a single mother. She's also going to school, getting her PhD at Indiana. That's not cheap either.
No, that's expensive, so yeah.
And to make matters worse for Julie, the prosecution comes out seeking the death penalty. But in Illinois, Julie had the right, as mandated by the state Supreme Court, to request appointment of 2 capital qualified attorneys to defend her. And this is big.
It is big.
She doesn't have the money to hire private counsel, but she has the right to have 2, not just 1, 2 capital qualified. These are people that are experienced in capital cases to represent her. But the prosecution's pretty smart. And they counter this by taking the death penalty off the table. So once they do that, Gibbs, she loses the right to have these 2 extremely qualified attorneys to represent her. She also loses some entitlements that are strictly related to facing the death penalty, like the capital litigation trust fund, right? There's money set aside by people that oppose the death penalty.
Yeah.
That will come in and help you in your case. She loses all of that. What she ends up with, and I'm not laughing or making light of it, but she ends up with a public defender. And public defenders are great. They provide a necessary service.
But I don't think you want them to represent you on a murder. I think you want somebody that has years and years of experience with defending somebody against murder, how to deal with jurors.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong. And we're not putting down public defenders.
No,
in
not
any
at
way.
all. No,
I think
no.
You're absolutely right, though. If you had your choice, you would want a top attorney known for defending people in death penalty cases. My assumption is not all public defenders have a wealth of experience in that arena. So she's going to go to trial, and she's going to go to trial with this public defender. It doesn't happen until the spring of 2002. So about a year and a half after she was indicted. Now, one thing that's important, Julie Ray maintained her innocence from the very beginning all the way through the end of the trial. The prosecution essentially had very little circumstantial evidence to present in court. So what they chose to do was really attack Julie's character. The prosecution called witnesses to the stand that, I guess you would call it, Gibbs questioned Julie's character in some ways. They even had an expert in body language to testify as to how they interpreted Julie's demeanor in the courtroom. So literally, Gibbs, what she did or with her arms and body,
The way you crossed,
facial expressions.
the way you crossed your arms, your legs, the way that you tapped your nail on the table, whatever, right?
As she's sitting next to her attorney, because she didn't take the stand.
No.
Kind of grasping at straws a little bit. Julie's ex-husband took the stand, testified against her, saying that she had once considered having an abortion after she became pregnant with Joel. Now, this is something that Julie adamantly denied. She was raised in a very religious household, and she said she would have never considered this.
I think this was a ploy by the prosecution because where it was tried, this is in southern Illinois, and this is more of a conservative area. And I think they were hoping that the jury would see this as a character flaw.
The prosecution introduced some bloodstain pattern analysis to try to support their argument that there was no intruder, no one entered the home that night, and Julie was, in fact, her son's killer. Julie's court-appointed public defender was outmatched in this trial. First of all, there were 3 prosecutors. There was a lot of resources against her. Julie's defense attorney advised her not to take the stand, and she didn't. I think Gibbs, part of the thinking was that these are very experienced prosecutors. They know what they're doing, and they know how to trip people up. It's nerve-wracking. You and I have been involved in some depositions, things like, and we weren't even on trial for our lives. It's very nerve-wracking to have an experienced attorney ask you questions when they've designed the questions in a very specific way to try to trip you up, even when you haven't done anything wrong.
Right. We know that. And the weird part is they act like they're the nicest person to you.
Oh, sure.
And then when it's like, okay, we're going to start, man, once it's like a switch goes and they are the biggest jerk.
It's kind of like the Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope. The beginning, it's all handshakes and, hey, do you want a donut? And here's some coffee. And then once you turn on the audio and video recording, it is all business. And they are there to try to mess you up.
Exactly. That's why they ask you the same question 10 different times. You're like, I already answered it.
I do. That's what I said.
Again, please.
Did I not just answer that last time? But in doing that, it gets you flustered. Now, Gibbs, you say all the time, right? Listen to your counsel. It's normally very good advice. But I will say the jury was polled after this case, and they really thought that it was a mistake for Julie not to take the stand. I got the sense that they wanted to hear her on the stand under oath say, I did not kill my son.
Yeah, I think they did. They wanted to hear the mom and hear the emotions behind it.
And they wanted to hear the story, the way that everything unfolded in her own words.
I agree.
So the trial lasted a few weeks and the jury deliberated for about 5 hours. They found Julie Ray Harper guilty of first-degree murder, and the judge sentenced her to 65 years in prison.
It's a long time.
But she maintained her innocence. But then Julie got a little bit of good luck. She hadn't had any so far. And that was when 2020, not that long after her conviction, decided to do a story on her case. And 2020 interviewed Julie. And again, she reiterated that she was innocent. She pleaded. She was desperate, Gibbs. She pleaded for anyone to help her fight this conviction. But she also pleaded for justice for Joel. Because if she didn't do it, as she claimed, then obviously somebody is out there free after murdering her child.
And that would be frustrating, right? You are behind cells.
I think it's a double frustration.
Yeah, you really probably hadn't had time to even grieve for your loss, right? Because you went from just defending yourself, and then you find yourself in prison, and now you're trying to get anybody to help find out who did this to your son, but you need to get out too, because you don't belong behind bars, because you're telling everybody you didn't do this. You're innocent.
Well, I would think you would want to get out to help find the person that did it too.
Yeah.
But luckily, the night that this 2020 episode aired, a crime writer by the name of Diane Fanning was watching. She got very interested in the story, and she believed that Julie Harper was innocent and wanted to help her. So Gibbs, this is where things get very interesting. This is also where the tie-in comes in to True Crime All the Time, because Diane Fanning was writing a book on the brutal killer Tommy Lynn Sells. You and I know Tommy Lynn Sells very well.
Well, we don't know him that
Not
well.
know him, but we did a lot of research for an episode on him.
Did.
That, what was that, last year?
It was a very popular episode too.
You sure? I was thinking that maybe even 2017.
I think it was 2018.
Maybe. I'd have to look it up. But a lot of people have probably listened to it. If you haven't, Tommy Lynn Sells was a serial killer with a long history of drug addiction. And he was brutal, Gibbs. If you think back to that episode, Tommy was the guy that would hop a train and stop in a town that he essentially had no connection with, find someone to murder, and then he would be gone. And we talked about it. That type of murderer is one of the hardest to catch.
It is, because there's just no way to track the movements.
And there's no tie, right? There's no tie to the victims.
Just so random, like Israel Keys.
Yeah.
I think that's why they were successful as long as they were.
Right. Until at the end, Israel Keys targeted somebody that...
Yeah, the little photo booth thing or whatever, that little
coffee
kiosk thing. Yeah.
So in the course of writing this book, Diane Fanning corresponded with Tommy Lynn Sells. And during one of the exchanges, she started talking about in a letter Julie's case and the fact that she had doubts if Julie was guilty. Fanning disclosed that Tommy Lynn Sells confessed to her that he murdered Joel Kirkpatrick. He told her that he recalled entering a house in that same area where Julie and Joel lived. He recalled stabbing someone repeatedly while they were asleep. And then he told Diane Fanning that he recalled struggling with a woman as he escaped from the home. All of those details, Gibbs, sound very much like what happened in Julie's house that night.
It sure does.
And I think Diane Fanning was shocked because she later stated that she never gave Tommy Lynn Sells the details like the who, the when, and the where. And I guess as they're having this correspondence, at one point, Tommy pulled up an article about the murder of Joel, And he told Fanning that it happened just a few days after the murder and sexual assault of a teenager in nearby Springfield, Missouri.
Which is going to be fairly close to where Joel lived.
Puts him in the area.
Puts him close enough, for sure.
In that time frame.
Yes.
Now, eventually, Fanning gets this information in the right hands. I mean, first of all, she obviously talks to Julie. This information gets into the hands of the Center for Wrongful Convictions at Northwestern University, and then ultimately to the Chicago law firm Schiff Hardin. And they decide to take Julie's case, her appeal case, pro bono, and Gibbs, they end up spending about $1 million in what would be billable hours. Obviously, they don't spend $1 million, but that's how much it would cost you or I.
It's quite a bit.
For what they did. Yeah, it's a lot. But they're good at what they do, and it works. Because it's just a little bit more than 2 years after Julie's conviction that the appellate court vacates it. And they order that Julie is to be released immediately. But it doesn't happen. She is just about ready to leave prison when prosecutors rearrest her. They want to try her again, right? Because the vacating of the conviction is great, but the prosecution has the option to retry her if they want. And they choose that option. But what you have at this point is a lot of supporters that have seen Julie's case. They know about it. They don't think it's right. And there's a lot of them that rally to support her. They raise about $75,000 in less than a week.
Quite a bit of money.
And they use it to get her out on bond.
Well, at least she's now free, right?
She's free. She's out of prison, but she's gearing up to be retried.
Yeah.
For the murder of her son. Let's not forget that. It had such an element.
Well,
horrible to be tried for any murder, but for the state to say that we believe you murdered
your son. Yep. So she's still not really getting time to do the grieving process. How can she? She's fighting for her life again.
Right. So like we said, she's gearing up for this retrial, and it's set to happen in 2006. But she does get a stroke of good luck. Something goes in her favor, because before the trial, the courts rule in favor of allowing convicted serial killer Tommy Linsell's written confession to be entered as evidence on behalf of Julie. So Tommy Linsell's, this unbelievable monster, wrote out a confession to the murder of Joel Kirkpatrick. He didn't have to do that, Gibbs. I think we talked about this a little bit. We touched on it, right, in the episode we did. It seems so much at odds with who Tommy Linsell's was. He didn't care about anyone.
He didn't.
He would murder the first person that he saw getting off a train if he wanted to.
Didn't care. Old, young, male, female, kid.
His victim age range, if I remember correctly, it spanned.
Yeah, he really enjoyed seeing the life leave the body.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was his thing. He loved watching that person die and seeing like the life just leave their body.
So it really struck me as odd, right? That this absolute monster all of a sudden says, you know what? I need to step up and do the right thing. And the right thing is confessing to this crime that I committed. And during this trial in 2006, the defense is able to introduce testimony that was never introduced in Julie's first trial. They had eyewitness testimony from a man named Alan Berkshire, who saw Tommy Linsell's in Lawrenceville the weekend Joel was killed. So he can put him in the town.
Yeah, which is key. It just solidifies all the information. It's all coming together. And I think if you're a juror sitting there hearing this, if your whole purpose is to create reasonable doubt, I think you've done it.
That goes a long way towards it. It's not like the prosecution had a witness that said, you know what, I saw Tommy Lynn Sells in Stockton, California that weekend. They didn't have anything like that. The defense also had testimony from a woman named Sandra Worth, who stated that she sold Tommy Lynn Sells a bus ticket in Winnemucca, Nevada.
Oh, Winnemucca.
2 days after Joel was killed. And this testimony was significant as well because the Texas Rangers knew Tommy Lynn Sells was in Winnemucca.
They're just able to weave this timeline together.
It's kind of like all the puzzle pieces are starting to fall into place. And Gibbs, I think the Texas Rangers were sold on the confession of Tommy Lynn Sells. There was a lot in the research about the fact that they reviewed the evidence, the kind of the timeline pieces that we're talking about. And like we said, it all fit. It seemed to me that they were all in, that this confession was genuine.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't made up. The defense also introduced a recorded interview that police did with Tommy Lynn Sells in 2003. So they traveled to Texas to interview him in prison. And I think it was pretty obvious, Gibbs, on the recording that Sells gave details that only the killer would know. He said that during the struggle inside the house, the woman clung to his leg as he tried to walk away, like he was dragging her as she was holding on to his leg.
Yeah.
And this is something that Julie had described, grabbing the intruder's leg after he beat her and being dragged along the carpet. To corroborate that, the defense called a nurse who treated Julie after the incident, and the nurse said she observed what appeared to be rug burns on Julie's leg. And I do, Gibbs, want to read just a little bit of the transcript from that interview. Not much, just a little bit to get a taste of it. So Sells says, "You all haven't asked this, but I will go ahead and tell you this. Do I think I'm the one that killed this kid? Yes. Now, I guess it's between us four to prove that I did, and I'm willing to do anything I can to help you all. Now, I don't give a bleep about this woman, Julie. If it wasn't this kid I killed, then there's a murderer out there that we still ain't undug yet." Now, let's face it, Tommy Lynn Sells was not the brightest bulb in the batch.
Not at all.
And I think that's...
He didn't care.
No, he didn't care. But I think that's obvious from the way he talked. I actually even changed some of the words to make it sound more coherent. And then a sergeant asked Sells, "Are you positive this information goes along with the murder we're looking at?" Sells' reply is, "I know it goes along with a murder, like 2 days before the Springfield murder." The Tommy Lynn Sells confession, it didn't set well with some people, namely some family members and the prosecution. They had issues with his credibility. And they also said that he got facts incorrect.
I think it would be weird for most people to have a very bad serial killer give testimony that he did something that could reverse a verdict that you felt strongly about. And I think the prosecutors felt strong about their verdict and didn't want to see it overturned by basically a thug on death row.
I think you're absolutely right. So for me, it's a couple of things. Number one, the prosecution never wants to see their conviction overturned. Never. That's the last thing they want. And then number two, I think you do have to question the validity of what somebody like a Tommy Lynn Sells has to say. We know this guy is beyond evil. But on the flip side of that, you have to look at what Tommy Lynn Sells has to gain by doing this. He's not really getting anything out of it. The one thing I would say is maybe a little more notoriety. Like his name is now brought up again.
Yeah.
That would be the only thing I can think of. He's not getting special privileges. He's not getting a reduced sentence or anything like that. Now, there was another important ruling by the court. The prosecution tried to introduce Lynn Kirkpatrick's testimony again in this retrial, but this time they weren't allowed. The court ruled that his testimony towards Julie's character could not be used. The defense focused on the fact that police zeroed in on Julie as the prime suspect very early on. From the defense's point of view, they felt that if you examined the physical evidence, which we said was very little, and the circumstantial evidence in this case for just a few days, the only conclusion that you could reach is that Julie was innocent.
And I agree with them.
That was their stance.
I agree with them.
Well, I agree with the fact that from the evidence that we know about, that we uncovered in the research and that we've talked about, it doesn't seem like there was enough to convict her. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the defense thought, the police came, heard her story, and immediately, in their minds, convicted her of this crime, that they made up in their mind that she was guilty.
I think you're right. And then you add on top of that, and this happens in a lot of cases, right? You get tunnel vision. Once the police zero in on a suspect, do they exclude all other suspects? Because why are you going out and doing all this work when you already believe that it's this person?
Yeah. And I think if that's how it's conveyed to other people there, other people investigating, then I think they try to make the evidence fit what they've heard.
Well, either that or they're focusing their time and effort on things that would prove she did it.
Yeah.
As opposed to following any other trail. You don't want to get off the trail you're on because you're trying to prove at the end of the day that who you think did it actually did it.
Did it, yeah.
You mentioned it, Gibbs. They didn't dust the home for fingerprints. It was also said that the deputy that arrived on the scene first had nothing in his report about searching the backyard for footprints of an intruder.
But at trial, he testified that before entering the house, he took his flashlight, he shined it down on the ground into the yard on the wet dew-covered grass, and he couldn't find any evidence of any footprints. The only problem with that is the neighbor would contradict what he said, because the neighbor said he walked in the same area in his bare feet and the grass was dry. And then they also reached out to a meteorologist who reviewed the weather records that morning, and he said, look, there was no dew that morning. So if the neighbor says there was no dew, the meteorologist says there was no dew, we know at the time of the crime scene, it was said that nobody investigated it. So clearly this person on the stand saying that, there was wet dew, I looked, I saw no footprints. What's he talking about? Because nobody else is seeing the same thing he's saying he saw.
We got a real doo-doo problem here.
Got a doo-doo.
Yep.
Clean up.
The defense argued that if Julie had stabbed her son to death that night, she would have been covered in his blood, because this was a very bloody scene. And I wanted to talk about it earlier, but I thought we would wait for this moment. I don't know how anybody could have landed that many stabbing blows in the manner that it happened, have the police show up later and have no blood on them. Now, we talked about the fact that they searched the drains and all that. Gibbs, that's what they were looking
for.
They were. They thought she had changed clothes. They thought she had showered. That's why they looked in the washing machine. For a fact an intruder is not going to use the washing machine.
No, it's just somebody that would live there trying to clean up something.
I think it's further proof as to the tunnel vision that they really had in this case towards Julie. The big thing in this trial, Gibbs, was that this time she took the stand. She got to tell her story in her own words to a jury of her peers for the first time. And I do think it worked, right? The jury could feel her pain.
She definitely conveyed it to them for sure. It came off, well, real, genuine, right? I mean, it was.
They thought it was,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think jurors later said that after hearing her give her account, they knew there was no way that she could have murdered her son. She was shattered by the death of her son, and they knew it. They could tell. This trial lasted about 2 weeks, and the jury deliberated for about 12 hours.
Which is a long time.
It's a pretty good amount of time.
I mean, they were really thinking about it. They wanted to make sure they made the right decision with information given.
It's not the 35 hours that we talked about last week on True Crime All the Time.
No, it's always, I think if you're a defendant, the longer, the better.
The longer, the better.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was better for Julie. They came back, found her not guilty. After the trial, a member of Julie's defense team was asked by a reporter whether or not it takes more than $1 million to prove that you're innocent in America today. And his response was, if you have prosecutors who are willing to go on a crusade to ignore the evidence, who are unaccountable, who are unchecked, then yes, it takes $1 million to even the scales.
That's big numbers, man.
It's big numbers, but it's also really scary. You know, some of these wrongful convictions, Gibbs, they scare the you-know-what out of me, thinking that with very little evidence, and I think this case is a prime example of that, with very little evidence, you can get indicted. With very little evidence, you can be put on trial. And without the proper funding for a top-notch defense, with very little evidence, you can be convicted. That should scare everyone.
Oh, it really, yeah. Don't sleep tonight.
Yeah, I really feel bad for Julie because I feel like she was victimized multiple times. Number one, her son was taken from her. And then number two, she was accused of his murder, convicted. And like you said, I really don't think after his murder, she would have had time to grieve properly. Because remember, they're looking at her right away, questioning her, leaning on her for a couple of years. I just think that's really sad.
It is sad.
It's sad that a 10-year-old lost his life. It's sad that Julie had to go through years and years of what she went through to finally come out on the other side vindicated. But that's it, Gibbs. That's the case of Joel Kirkpatrick. We got some voicemails. You want to hear those?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Dudes, you guys are great. Caller from Kansas, and stumbled upon you a couple months ago. I was listening to Cold Case Files, and it said recommended, and you guys popped up, and I blew through the TCAT, and now I'm on the Unsolved, and you guys are just unbelievable, funny, and I just like the way you guys are serious and funny, and got to mention Team Gibby all the way. Keep your own time ticking.
All right. I appreciate that voicemail.
I do too.
Even with the part at the end. We haven't had a Team Gibby in a little while. I had some love last week, I think.
Yeah.
But it's all good.
Appreciate
it's all Team TCAT, no matter who you favor.
Love it all, man.
And we appreciate the kind words. Now, he's on Unsolved. I don't know where he's at, so it may be a while before he gets to hear his voicemail.
Well, that's true.
Hey guys, this is Fantasia from Illinois, and I just finished listening to the Trudy Appleby case, and I just want to let you guys know that's the very first case I've ever listened to that actually made me cry, because they're talking about how her friend would hit the mailbox at the very end. That just really got me. So thanks for everything you guys do, and keep your own time ticking.
All right, thanks for that voicemail, and she's in Illinois, so hopefully she'll like this case.
Yeah.
I will say that part of the Trudy Appleby story, it made both you and I a little misty when you think about her friend standing at the end of the driveway by the mailbox.
Well, sure.
Every day waiting for her. Yeah, it's hard not to get a little choked up thinking about that.
Appreciate it.
Hi, guys. This is Cheryl from Prescott, Arizona, one of your new family followers. I love your show. I had to laugh this morning because it's Vacaville, California. I was raised in the Bay Area back in the 70s and 60s, born in 57. So, yeah, I'm older than y'all, but that's okay. But I just love your guys' show. I just think you are wonderful. I love the banter. Like I said, my husband runs a freight because I've been married 3-4 times, and he's been 23 years with me, but I told him, I've been divorced 3 times, but I've never been a widow, so don't push it. And then when I bring on all these crime shows, he's like, I'm never leaving you. So anyway, thanks, guys, from Prescott, Arizona. Have a great day and keep your own time a-ticking.
So in a way, Gibbs, we're quasi-marriage counselors.
True.
We say we're saving a lot of marriages because
not a good one, but okay.
No, I love that. I'm sure I pronounced it Vacaville. I think I've done that before.
Yeah, it wasn't me. You did it.
I'm sure it wasn't you with your 2% word participation.
Yeah. Well, that's what my contract states.
One of these days, I'm going to actually take the time to figure out the percentage of time that you talk or words that you say.
Remember what I say. I always say it's not how much I say, it's what I say.
I know. It's very powerful.
That's powerful, man.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is Louise from Melbourne, Australia. I have been binging on true crime all the time since a little before New Year, so Happy New Year. You now have an addict to join your ranks for this coming year. Anyway, keep up the good work, stay safe, and keep your time ticking. Bye.
Oh, they got to I was going to do my Australian, but it turned out to be I don't know.
When you stop in the middle,
bad.
You knew it was bad.
Yeah.
Because you don't normally do that. As bad as they normally are, you'll keep going.
I know. I had to
stop. That must have really caught your attention.
Well, we got another Aussie.
Why didn't you do your razor blades?
Oh, yeah. Rise up lights. Rise up lights.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got you.
Yeah, we love our listeners in Australia. We have a ton of listeners in Australia.
And New Zealand.
And New Zealand as well.
Yeah. So I guess I'll make a track down there.
We need to do
a walkabout.
We need to do a case out there. We've been getting a lot of good suggestions on the
how long does it take to get there? Maybe I'll go spend a week there.
Way too long.
I guess I got to spend more than a week there.
Yeah, I think if you're going to fly over there, you probably want to stay a little bit
If I was
longer.
displaced like you, I'd go ahead and go now.
Why not?
Just go.
Hey, Jill from Chicago. Just wanted to let you know I finally updated my Patreon, and I'm the one that said if I get my raise, you're going to get a raise. So I did it, and I wanted to encourage everybody that even if everyone did $5 a month, and I know some people do more, and that's great, that would really help. Mike's looking for another job, but we want to make him a full-time podcaster. Love you both. Gibbs, I hope everything's going okay. Have you both in my thoughts and prayers. Thanks. Bye.
All right. We love Jill.
Yeah, we do. Jill
sends us Duke sausage. She is
takes care of
such
us.
a big supporter of the show.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not looking for another job. I got to be honest with you.
No.
I might one day, but right now I am trying to
just
make
think,
this podcasting thing work.
If everybody listening would just do $2 to our Patreon, I could join you full time.
You could. We could both do it
really
full
push
time.
out some good stuff on top of the good stuff you're already getting. But
we could do a bunch.
But yeah, no, Chicago. Hey, Jill, we're going to be there in July, by the way.
Yeah, come see us.
Yep.
All right, Gibbs, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.